Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Temitope. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for checking again. Today we are going to be making this beautiful dress for a little young girl. So if this is what you're interested in knowing how to make, so you want to continue watching this video. And also remember to like this video, give your comments, and also subscribe to this channel. You may also want to turn on your notification bell so that you can get notified each time I upload a new video. So let's go straight into the tutorial. Using 1 yard of doll face, I have my Ankara here, the lining, and I'm also making use of 8 yards of tulle net. So the first thing I did is to fold my fabric into two, and I made sure that what I folded is enough to go around the girl's hip. So for instance, this baby girl I'm making her dress, her hip is 26. So by the time I divide that into 4, I have 6.5. So I made sure that what I folded is more than 6.5. You can see that I have about 10 inches or more here. So make sure that you have more than the hip allowance when you fold. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to mark the starting line. So I already marked that, so this is going to be the starting line. Now I'm going to be marking the length of the upper part. So the upper part of the dress starts from the shoulder to somewhere below the hip. So I'm going to take the baby's shoulder to hip measurement, and then I'm going to be adding 5 inches to that. So I'm just going to, the hip measure, that hip measurement is 18 inches. So I'm just going to count 5 inches more. But I'm not just going to mark the 5 inches because I'm cutting directly on the fabric. I'm not using a pattern. So I'm going to be adding the stitching allowance there. So I'm going to be adding 1 inch for the stitching allowance. So I'm going to be marking 19 inches. So now this stitching allowance is actually for the upper, for joining the shoulder and also the lower part. So now we have the starting line and the end line for the upper part. And now we are going to be taking the other horizontal measurement, vertical measurements, which is the waistline. So the waist is 13 inches. So I'm going to be adding half of an inch to that also allowance, just to include the stitching allowance, because we are not cutting on a pattern, we are cutting directly on the fabric. Then I'm going to be taking the shoulder to hip measurement. Like earlier said, it is 18 inches. So I'm going to add half of an inch to that too. So I'm going to be marking 18.5. So I'm going to draw a straight line across this. Then I'm going to, so this is the starting line, the waistline, the hip line, and then the length, which is the length of the upper part. So I'm going to be taking the neck measurement. I'm going to be using 2.5 by 2.5. But this lower part, the vertical one, I'm not going to be measuring exactly 2.5 because I'm going to be adding the same allowance. So stitching allowance. So I'm going to make it 3 inches, and I'm just going to draw the curve like this. So instead of making 2.5 by 2.5, the one that comes down, I'm going to make it 3 inches. So now I'm going to be marking the shoulder measurement. I'm going to be dividing the shoulder into 2. The shoulder is 11, divided by 2 is 5.5. I'm not going to be marking 5.5. I'm going to be coming in by half of an inch. So I'm going to mark 5 inches. This is because it is sleeveless. Then I'm going to come down by 1 inch and then connect it to the neckline. Then from that shoulder line, I'm going to be getting the armhole. So to get the armhole, I'm going to divide the bust measurement by 6 and add 1.5. It works for children too. So I'm going to, bust measurement is 26. So divide by 6 and add 1.5. So I'm going to be getting 6.5. So I'm going to be using this for the armhole, and that will serve as a chest line also. So I'm going to draw a line across it too. Then I'm going to be connecting from the shoulder to the chest line. So I'm going to locate the middle of the shoulder, and then at that point I'm going to come in by 1/4 of an inch. Then on my chest line, I'm going to be taking the bust measurement. So I'm going to divide the bust measurement into 4. Then I'm going to mark it. And I'm not just going to mark, I'm also going to be adding the same allowance. So I'm going to be adding 2 inches to the bust measurement, which is going to be the same allowance. So now I'm going to be connecting these 3 points. I'm going to be connecting the shoulder, the armhole, to the bust measurement, which I marked on the chest line. So I'll be using my curve rule like this. Then on the waistline, I'm going to be placing the darts. So I'm going to be using 3 inches for the darts. So I'm going to mark that on the waistline. I'm going to mark it on the hip line, and I'm also going to mark it on the chest line. Then I'm going to connect it with a straight line. Then on the waistline, I'm going to be coming in by 1/4 of an inch on both sides. So that will be the dart on the waistline. So I'm going to connect it upward and also connect it downward. But I'm going to make sure that I stop 1 inch before the hip line. So now I'm going to be connecting from that chest line to the middle of the armhole. So I'm going to use my curve rule to connect it to the middle of the armhole. So I'm not going to let it start from the chest line directly. I'm going to let it come down a bit, about 1/2 of an inch, so that point will not have a sharp point, so it can be smooth. So you can see the way it's loose. So I'm just going to smoothen it like that. And then on the waistline, I'm going to be taking my waist measurement. I'm going to divide the waist measurement by 4. I'll mark it, and then I'm going to mark the allowance that I have for the waist, for the darts. I'm going to place that back. That's 1/2 inch. I'm going to place it back. Then I'm going to be adding stitching same allowance of 2.5 inches. On the chest line, I added 2 inches, but here I'm adding 2.5 inches. This is because on the dart area, I'm going to be using 1/2 of an inch on both sides to hold the dart. So that's about 1 inch. Then I'm going to use 1/2 of an inch to stitch the lining to the fabric also. So from 2.5, that means I've left it 1 inch allowance. So on the chest line, I'm going to add 1/2 of an inch too, because the dart is also going to pass through there, and I have to cut the dart through there too. So by the time I stitch, I'm going to be having 1 inch allowance too. So on the hip line, I'm going to be dividing the hip measurement by 4. So the hip measurement is 26 divided by 4. That will give me 6.5. So I'm going to mark it. Then I'm also going to be adding same allowance. So I'm going to be adding 2 inches. So I'm not going to be cutting it down through the hip. So 2 inches is fine. But the hip measurement, I'm not just going to use exactly the hip measurement, because the style is something that is not something that is straight. So I added an extra 1 inch on the hip side. So I added that too before adding the same allowance. So for this lower part, I'm going to measure what I have on the hip there too. But I'm also going to be adding 1 inch extra. That's because the style is like A shape, it's not straight. So I'm just going to mark it out. So now I'm going to be placing the front part on the back part. So you can see I have this fabric folded into 2, and I'm just marking out the zipper allowance, and I'm using 1 1/4 inch for that zipper allowance. So note how I'm going to cut the neck for the back. You can see that I just bring it down a bit, because it's not going to be as deep as the front part. And then I cut out the zipper area, because that place is going to have to open up. Then I'm going to be working on this lower part where we are going to be having our curves. So on this side here, I'm just going to mark out my same allowance, which is 2 inches first, before doing any other thing. Then after that, I'm going to mark 1/2 of an inch here. Then I'm going to come to the center line here and mark 1/2 of an inch also. Then I'm going to measure the distance I have in between these 2 points. So I have 7 inches here. So I'm going to locate the middle of the 7 inches, which is 3.5. So at that middle, I'm going to be marking 1/2 of an inch on both sides. So that means at that point, I'll be having 1 inch. So that means I have 1 inch here, and I have 1/2 inch at this front part, and at the side part, so I have 1/2 inch. So by the time I join it to the side, it's going to be 1 inch. And this front part, so by the time I join it to open it up, it's going to be 1 inch. So I'm going to be placing my curves in between this 1 inch that I mark. So I'm going to place my curve like this, and the second one too. So I'm going to be measuring the space in between where I marked, and that's 3 inches, and that's where my curve or semicircle is going to be. But to get the perfect semicircle, I'm going to locate the center of that 3 inches also, which is 1.5. So to get it accurately, I'm marking it from the beginning of the pattern. So I have 2 inches there, and I marked the 2 inches up there too. So that's how I connected that straight line there. So now from that straight line, I'm going to be coming down by 1.5 inch. That's because I've already added the stitching allowance. So by the time I finish stitching, it's going to be 1 inch below the hip line. So now I'm going to be using my curve rule to connect the semicircle as well. So I'm going to be placing it just like you see me do. So now I'm going to be using my free hand to smoothen it. I want to make it to make a perfect curve because I don't want that edge to be sharp. So now we have our first semicircle. So we'll be placing the second one in between. You can see that it starts from where it starts from, like the 1 inch mark, and then ends on the other half inch mark that I marked there. So I'm going to locate the middle also, 3, which is 1.5, and then I'm going to mark it on this upper part here so that I can get a straight line. So now I'm going to come down by 1.5 inch just like I did here, and then I'm going to be drawing my curve on that point from the starting line through that point, then to the other line. So I'm going to be using my curve rule also. So don't forget that 2 inches is our seam allowance. They are the side there. So I'm going to connect the curves like this, and then I'm going to smoothen it so that it will not be so sharp. So I'm just going to cut it out, and you can note that I'm cutting the two together, I mean the front and the back together. So now I can go ahead to cut out the dart. So this is the front part. I'm going to be joining the dart area. I'm going to starting from the hip area towards the armhole, and I'm going to do that to the other side and also to the lining. So I already joined the lining, so I'm going to be placing it on the fabric, right side facing right side, and then I'm going to be stitching the neck. So after stitching, I am notching it, and then I'm going to flip it open and top stitch on it. So now I'm going to be joining the armhole area, the sides, and also all these semicircle areas. I'm going to be closing them up, but I'm going to leave a space on the side here so that I'm going to be using it to turn it out, turn the fabric out from there. So I'm going to notch it so that it can relax. So I already turned it out, and so that space that I used to turn it out, I'm going to be top stitching on it. So this is the back part. I already joined the neck area. So you can see I have the right side facing the right side, and it's the wrong side that I'm going to be stitching on. So I'm going to be closing the zipper area. I will not be closing the armhole. I'll be leaving some space on the side and be stitching the rest, and I'll also be stitching the semicircles. So you can see I'm done with that, and you can see that I have the armhole open and some side on the and some part on the side. So I'm going to be closing the zipper allowance now. So remember that we use 1 1/4 for our zipper allowance. So we already use 1/2 inch to stitch the lining to the fabric. So we have 3/4 inch left. So I'm going to use 3/4 inch to fix the zipper. So I marked 16 inches from the start to this point. That's where I'm going to be fixing the zipper, and the rest I'm going to be stitching it up before fixing my zipper. So I already fixed the zip. You can see. So I want to join the front side to the back side. So I'm going to be joining the shoulders. So now I'm going to be placing the shoulders just like this, and then I'm going to be turning it around just like the way we join our regular shoulder. But the only thing here is that I'm going to be joining the armhole of the back part together with it. So after placing it together like this, I'm going to pin it together so that it can stay in place. And then I'm now going to be tucking in the remaining fabric, the whole fabric, into the armhole. Just like I am doing here, you can see that I'm placing it into the armhole. So now I'm going to be able to stitch the armhole this way. So I'm going to pin the armhole down so that it does not disturb. Then I can easily stitch it. Then I'm going to stitch the shoulder, then stitch the armhole also. Then when I'm done, I'm going to be bringing it out from the opening on the side there. So this is exactly what I did, and I've done it to both sides. I can see the opening where I brought it out from. So I'm going to be top stitching on that just to close it up. So I'm going to be cutting out belts for this style since it's for a kid. So I have 30 inches here, and the width is 2.5. So by the time I open it up, it's going to be 5 inches. So I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch so that I'm going to have 2 inches left. So now I'm going to be coming up by 3 inches just to shape the belt. I'm going to shape it like this, and I'll cut that place out, and then I'm going to stitch the lower part, then bring it out from that end. So before stitching the front to the back, I'm going to be fixing the belt there. So I'm going to measure my waist length, which is 13 inches, and then I'm going to mark it there, then place the belt a little bit above it, like make sure that the belt is showing above it a bit. Then I'm going to be pinning it down. so that it does not shift or it does not become, so it can be straight. Then the other side too, I'm also going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to measure the waistline, mark it, and then make the belt come above the waistline a bit. So now I'm going to be shaping it together. I'm going to pinning it together and shape. So on the bust side, I'm going to be taking the bust measurements. I'll divide the bust measurements by 2. I'll mark it. Then whatever I have left here, I'm going to be dividing that into 2. So I have 2 inches left here. So that means I'll be taking 1 inch on both sides. Then I'm going to mark to make sure that I have exactly 1 inch there. So I'm going to place my taper on the shoulder and mark to the waistline, which is 13 inches. And on the waistline, I'm also going to be dividing the waist measurement by 2. So here I have, the waist measurement is 25, so I have 12 and a half. Then I'll be marking what I have. I'll be measuring what I have left. I'll divide that into 2. And then I'm going to be taking half of it, what I have there. That's 1 1/4. I have 2.5 inches left. So I'm going to be taking 1 1/4 on both sides. So for the hip, I'm going to measure the hip to divide the hip measurements by 2. So the hip measurement is 26, divided by 2 is 13 inches. I'm going to mark what I have there. I have over 3 inches there. So I'm going to be, like I have about 3.5. So I'm going to divide that into 2. So that's going to be 1 1/4. And then I'm going to be taking it on both sides. So on the lower part here, I'm going to be taking 1 1/2 inch on both sides because I want to make sure that I have half of an inch remaining there. So I'm going to measure that to make sure that I have half of an inch. So I'm going to be taking what I have left there. Then I'm going to be connecting it together. So I'm going to stitch this together now. So this is the tool that we are going to be using. And to use the tool, we are going to be taking the edge of the tool, the 2 edges. We are going to be bringing it together. And we are going to be pleating it together because we want it, I want the gather to be full. So we are just going to be using those 2 together so that it can be very full. So this is how we are going to be pleating all around the curves, and then we turn it over. So by the time we are done, the lower part will not be regular. So we are just going to measure out our gown length and trim off the excess that we have there. So I'm just going to do that exactly on my machine now. I'll keep holding the two together, the 2 edges together, and I'll keep gathering it on the curves, on the semicircles all around. You can see the way I'm going. And by the time I get to that edge, to that pointed part at the lower part there, I'm going to raise my footer up and then turn it to the other side so that I can have a V there. You can see what I did. So, and then I'll keep pleating all the way and make sure that my pleating is deep, so that it can be fine and it will be full and very good looking. So by the time I get to the end of the starting line, by the time I get to the starting line, I'm not going to cut out the 2 because I'm just going to be pleating on the previous one, and that's exactly what I did here. And you can see this part that is not even showing that I did not join it because I already pleated extra on it. So now I'm going to be marking out the gown length, and then I'm going to cut the excess out, and I make sure that it's going to be straight. So by the time you cut, you raise it up again, and then you cut. If there's any excess, you cut it out. So this is the satin that I'm using. I'm using 1 yard. So the 1 yard, I divided it into 2. So that means I'm using length 18 here. So I'm going to be joining it together so that I can have it to be very long. And now I'm going to be stitching it on the lower part. So here you can see that I'm stitching it on the opposite side. It's not the side where I stitch the 2 from. So I'm stitching it from the wrong side instead of stitching it from the right. So it's going to be covering up the stitches of the 2. So I'll keep pleating it like this, but I'm not going to pleat it as deep or as full as I pleated the 2. So I'm already done pleating it, and I've also trim out the excess. So I'm just going to fold the edge there, and this is what we have, our beautiful gown. So do not forget to like this video, leave your comment. Thank you for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.